Hey gardeners, welcome back. My name is Lindsay and I am the creator of the Mindful Living Movement. I'm about to take you on my garden tour number 4. So we are now middle of June and I have the majority of my garden planted. I have a few more things that I am seed starting. I'm going to just take you through everything beginning to end, show you where I've won the battle with flea beetles, where they're still kind of affecting things. The birds have really been going crazy in my garden this year, and I think that's because I haven't filled up my bird feeder, but I'll show you what damage they've done and I'll show you what I'm doing to kind of protect things. I've had some major indecisions as well about where I want to put things because I ended up with a lot of extra spaces in my garden, and so, you know, offers more creativity, but then there's also lots of things to think about. So I'll share with you what I did end up deciding on. And our house guests that I showed you last time around have grown substantially. They're quite cute. I'll give you a little hello to those guys before we go today. So I'm going to start things off here in the back of my garden, switching things up a little bit, showing you what's happening here at the end of my one big main gardening bed. So I've got this whole big section here is now being covered with bird netting because my beets, I've got 3 different plantings of beets that I sort of staggered about every roughly 2 weeks or so, and the tinier they are, the more the birds can do damage to them, so I just had to cover them to protect everything. I also finally committed and I put my bok choy and some more kale outside now that the flea beetles have finally let up. So I'll give you a little peek inside low tunnel, or I shouldn't say low tunnel, kind of low tunnel. I use the frames for my low tunnel to put row cover fabric over to help keep the bugs off of those guys. Here is a close look. So first things first, this little section in the back here doesn't have too much exciting things happening. As of right now, that's all lettuce. So the lettuce has finally started to poke itself up. My mustard is also just at the very beginning of showing itself, but the flea beetles have kind of done a little bit of damage to some of those seedlings, which is unfortunate, but they're still hanging in there. This is empty. And I think I'm going to put some more kale there. I don't know, I'm really obsessed with kale this year, so it's probably what's going to happen. Now, you might be able to see through here, but I planted, there's probably 30 bok choy plants hanging out inside this little row cover here. And I've got the fabric doubled up because I didn't quite have enough to cover over this thing, and you can see it all clipped and everything like that. The wind inevitably will pull it off, but whatever, I just put it back on and kind of clip it down. These, how about these beautiful petunias? They're so gorgeous, had to sprinkle them around. So this section that I have freshly weeded for you guys, actually just finally got to conveniently before this. The carrots and the radish are getting pretty big in this row here. I'm going to be able to harvest those radish pretty soon. The onions have absolutely exploded. They are way bigger than they used to be. Now, through here, hopefully you can see through the netting, those are very badly bird-eaten beets. These ones didn't get it too bad this row here, but these ones, these are just very tiny little seedling ones inside here, and they unfortunately got quite eaten. I think they will make it though. If we come over here, the zucchinis are getting quite big. They really loved all this rain that we were just having. So they're getting really big. There's even some flowers starting on these ones. But I think they're all male flowers if I look really closely here. Yes, currently all male flowers, so it's going to be a little bit yet before we get some of the females happening. My little patch of beans in the back, this is one of my first plantings. They've grown a few leaves. They're starting to, just at the very beginning of climbing. This section here, which I showed you in the last video, is all of my kale, my broccoli, my kohlrabi. I've harvested kale now 3 times, 3 pretty big solid harvests. I'll give you a little peek at what's happening inside here. So there's a giant marigold. Look at all those kale. Those ones I just harvested off of. Now there are holes, you can see holes all the way over there on that one kohlrabi, but I've gone through and flipped all the leaves and looked really closely and picked off the green worms, so I'm not going to spray or use diatomaceous earth or anything right now because there wasn't too many of them, and I'm not too worried about it. I'm not afraid to eat things with some holes. It's just when the worms start going wild. And my broccoli, all the way up here, look at that, or broccolini I should say, is already starting to produce little baby heads. Here's my Swiss chard that they've been eaten halfway decently. This one in the back here, the little baby finches or whatever the heck they are really loving that. So I'm going to have to maybe cover this, I think. I sort of like the once and done, even though covering's kind of annoying for weeding. A big empty spot again, so I need to seed a lot more Swiss chard, but I'm wanting to kind of stagger it so that I can keep the baby leafy greens going. This guy here, this is some orac, which, look at that, more bird damage. Really got to get on that. Also, probably filling my bird feeder would help out a lot. My spinach, I've harvested all the spinach probably that I'm going to. Might harvest just a little bit more, but you can see more bird damage. And they're all going to seed. So all this crazy early heat that we've been getting is just not a fan. Spinach is not like that, so it's all going to seed. However, I'm letting it go to seed because I want to harvest them. So I'm just letting them do their thing for a little while. Carrots are in, they're doing okay. These are ones that were from the low tunnel that didn't get watered very well, so they're quite patchy. I did reseed some new rows, and they are starting to show themselves. These radish, I've been harvesting from these radish for a few weeks now, so they're starting to get down. I don't have too many more plants here for these ones, but I do have lots more radish going in another corner. And along the back here, so I've got one giant acorn squash, got some, what's that, peas, some borage, some nasturtium in the back there. We've got some more petunias, another acorn squash, and that's kind of it for this little corner here. These peas are doing really, really well. They're getting quite big. They haven't started to flower yet, but I think they're getting pretty close here. And then I've got a couple of borage, 2 borage just to flank here for bringing some pollinators in. The round 3 of peas is starting to show itself. More borage in the back, because can you have too much borage? Maybe. Guess we'll find out. I'm growing more than I ever have this year. So more acorn squash, 2 tiny little guys in the back there. We've got another candy cane zinnia. I've got those sprinkled all over the place. And then here, my turnip are doing really well. They're kind of at the point where I should consider thinning them. They do get pretty big, so they do kind of benefit from a thinning. I'm not very diligent at that, but who knows, might try it out this year. Now here I've got lettuce coming up and another round of spinach. So we'll see how these spinach do. This is kind of a shady corner-ish. I only get maybe like 4 hours of direct sun in this corner, which usually allows the leafy greens to last just a wee bit longer. So we're back into beautiful weather, but we had a little stint there just a few days ago with some really intense winds, some crazy downpours. I even think we might have had a little, like, I don't know what they're called, like a dirt devil sort of mini twister thing roll through our yard because weird pieces of furniture were moved around, and I had some plants that kind of got like twisted up all weird. Nothing broke, which is really, really awesome because that very much could have happened. But I'll show you my chives because they look kind of hilarious and they don't seem to want to perk back up. So this is the aftermath of the rain and the wind. And these guys are ready to be picked. I actually need to do that in the next day or two to make my chive flower vinegar. But yeah, look at these things. They just, that's that. I think that's how they're gonna have to be. Maybe once I pull the flowers off and harvest, they'll perk back up, but they're looking kind of funny. All of my strawberries, the amaranth are doing fairly well. The chickweed, I did a really solid weeding of chickweed, but this, here's a hunk right there. That is little chickweed seedlings. You can see they just turn into like a little fuzzy carpet, and they break off really easy, which is kind of unfortunate, but sometimes they won't reroot And so if you can just stir them up, that might be enough. Now look at all these flowers. My strawberries are just loaded with flowers. And there is even a few little baby green ones on here. And these are definitely gonna have to get covered because the birds go wild for the strawberries. So behind me is my tomato, pepper, basil, and since the last time we chatted, I also put some onions in. I even added a few more eggplants that I found at a greenhouse that were just huge and gorgeous and the right price, so I had to snag them and put them in there. And I can't believe how fast the onion bulbs perked up. I just had a few empty spots, so I just went and grabbed a bag of onion bulbs, and already they're like very, very well developed. So I'll give you a quick look at that. This is my mama's little garden patch. Nice big pepper hanging out on that guy. So here's one of the little onion patches that are already pretty much all showing themselves. Zinnias are flowering happily. This is my little eggplant patch, and these ones in the front here that are a little bit wilty, those guys are the ones that just got transplanted. Pepper plants are all huge, and the tomatoes, I actually need to get my string line trellis going for all these because they're starting to, like this one, this guy's just having a hard time with life leaning against the fence. He's gonna need to be trained up a trellis pretty quick here. Basil are all perking up. Here is another little patch of onions. Another little patch of onions, and look at how big some of these calendula are getting. These are sprinkled in and around everything. They kind of look like they're weeds, but these are going to be beautiful calendula flowers. These are my peppers that I actually think I need to get maybe some tomato cages on them because they're quite big and they're a little bit fully ovary. And then we've got, look at, oh, these guys. They actually have quite a few peppers happening on them already. That's exciting. Look at the flowers on these things too. I've never had a purple flower on a pepper plant before, but this year is the year, I guess. Tomatillos are loaded up with flowers. So these are pretty happy. And I'm pretty happy with how they're all doing, minus the fact that I really got to get some trellising happening for these guys because they are needing support. So I was having a really hard time with where to put certain plants. I really wanted to put my lemon balm and my mint in a forever home, but it kind of got to the point where I just had to stick them in some dirt because I needed to go out of town for a few days, and there was just no way with the heat that we were having that they would have survived, you know, the watering. They were needing to be watered twice a day, and so yeah, they'd have been for sure dead. So I ended up just sticking them in some pots. Now the issue that I was having and why I was so indecisive on the whole thing is that mint and lemon balm, they're in the same family. They're very, very invasive if you kind of let them run amok. Like, they will send out runners all over the place and just take over. And I really wanted to find something that I could drop down into the soil to sort of stop those runners from taking off. And I wasn't willing to cut up any of the pots that I have existing, so I'm kind of just gonna see what I can find maybe on some buy and sell websites or secondhand things over the summer, and get creative with where I end up putting them. I'll probably move them maybe into a permanent place in August, but for now they are in some giant pots, so I'm sure I will have an abundance of both. I'll give you a quick look at those. So there's my mint, and there's my lemon balm there. And this is actually like 4 different plants that I shoved in the same pot, and that was just one giant one that's doing quite well. Also, forgot I put some nasturtium in there. Now there is some marigolds, we've got some cucumbers, some zinnias, some more cucumbers in the back here, some more zinnias. These ones, they did not really do that great when I first transplanted them. We got really, really intense heat for like very early in June, very unusual. And so these guys, they just, all the heat from the concrete and the heat reflected off of here, they were kind of sad and stressed out, but all the rain and the cool sort of temps we've had for the last few days, they're finally starting to sort of come around a little bit. You can see how crispy they are. Here's my other ones. So they're looking much better, but they didn't have the best start. And I'm hoping that these, I can get them all, I'm gonna have to train them around that way. Oh, look at that. We got some flowers. That's exciting. And these empty pots. I think I'm just gonna dump these in the garden bed somewhere and go and put them away. So we are in my front yard now, and there's quite a lot I think that has changed in here. I know that I only just finally planted a few things up here within the last week, and quite a lot has filled itself in as well. I think this will be looking quite a bit different than the last time I shared it with you. So here are the tiny little cucumbers, and same as the other ones, they did not appreciate being roasted to death for the first week that they were in the ground. Freshly transplanted and getting cooked just didn't go well, but they're finally starting to kind of come around. So I've got the borage, some petunias, these fun colored guys. I've got some pinks and purples I just sprinkled around here. Marigolds to help keep away. There were thrips that were kind of attacking everything. I've sprinkled some lavender. That's what these guys are in the back here, some tiny little lavenders. There's a cucumber. There's some more lavender. Phacelia, some nasturtium. All of these succulents are doing pretty good. They were happy with the heat. They all need to be, some of the chicks and hens, it looks like I need to actually do some separating. They're getting a little squishy. My sedum is at the end of its flowering. Just the last few. And they're so pretty and short-lived. So this will be looking considerably more lifelike. Hostas are really perked up. The coleus, they actually are not as happy as I would like them to be. Some of them are doing okay. They didn't take kindly to that heat either. They're not a heat-loving plant. Even though the shade was here, we just got too much heat too quickly. My goji berries, they're doing pretty good. They're such a straggly, weird-looking plant, it's hard to tell, but they are actually doing well. And I have weeding to do like crazy. Look at all of that. Those are not anything that I want. Those need to be weeded out. You might remember this trellis thing I showed you. This is supposed to be cucamelons, and every single one of them except for this one over there, there's one tiny little leaf. They're basically all dead, and that one looks like it's about to die as well. So they didn't transplant well, and they were just shocked by the 34-degree heat that we got. So that's the end of those. I'll be moving that trellis. The elephant ears are done their flowering already. Those heads need to be cut off. These lilies are getting quite big, not quite showing their flower heads just yet. Over here we've got the little crookneck squash. They're starting to come around after transplanting in the heat. Milkweed, same thing. So here's my yellow irises. It's pretty sunny and they're quite bright, but they're such a pretty flower. Yellow with the big pink, and they're all in bloom. So across the front of the house here, this is Heliopsis, which still has quite a bit yet to go before it's going to flower. It gets really super tall. This is most definitely a weed. It has some tiny little blue flowers, which are kind of cute, but I don't want it to reseed itself, so it's going to get yanked. More elephant ears done flowering. I have just the very beginning of spinach starting to pop itself up here. So those, it's hard to tell, but those are spinach, those are a tree weed. So it's gonna be a very delicate situation weeding out and not accidentally pulling out my spinach in that corner. These rhubarb are getting gigantic, and I definitely need to harvest them. This one, I got another one over there. Cosmos are getting quite big and well established. Everything's kind of just over its transplanting shock and the heat of everything. They had such a hard time staying watered with everything that we were getting. Got some zinnias, some lilies. Oops. So this is a good example of being very careful with your drip irrigation. So this is a very newly transplanted plant, and this is way too far away. I must have kicked it or moved it or something, but yeah, that should be sitting right there. So I think he'll perk back up. I'll have to give him a watering here after I'm done. But yeah, good example of where you need to plant right underneath your drip irrigation to make sure that you don't accidentally kill your plants. These irises are all done flowering, same with the other ones in the back here, but these salvia are just beginning. They're just starting to put out their flower heads. And these beauties, check those out. Those are a purple columbine. I finally remember the name of them. So there's some little, those Phacelia or bluebells that have just started to flower. Grasses and everything are now nice and happy from all the rain. So this little stretch here, my wall of sunflowers and corn, they're all doing really, really well. And the fun part, I planted sort of a mixed bag. I wasn't even sure, it was some sort of miscellaneous. Lots of these already have flower heads. So these are obviously not a mammoth flower, but that's kind of fun that they're already starting to get some sunflowers going. This one for sure is a mammoth one because it's still just putting out leaves. And the corn are all getting pretty big. So this section is all brand new. This is what I'm hoping will be a perennial herb garden. So these are savory that are a little bit in shock from just being transplanted as well. We've got some sage, some oregano, some thyme, some more savory in the middle. So that's kind of what this whole little, it's a little like herb swirl set up around my irrigation. And these lilies actually have heads on them already. Look at that. The biggest excitement ever. My peonies are finally, for their very first time ever, going to flower. Can't wait to get to show you what that looks like. It looks like they're going to be a really dark reddy purple color. It's been such a long time since I planted them, I don't even know. Okay, so last time I showed you our little baby robins. Well, they are quite a bit bigger than they used to be, and there's only 3 of them in the nest now. So don't know what happened to the other 2, but nature has spoken, and now there's only 3. I'll give you a look at those guys and hopefully not disturb Mom. She must be out hunting because I don't see her anywhere. Look at these little guys. Just being quiet, trying to be as inconspicuous as they can be. Oh, do I hear Mom? Oh, I hear Mom. She's getting mad. I'm getting too close to the babies. This is Mom. And this is what she does when I get too close to her babies. Okay, Mama, I will leave you. You feed them. Well, gardeners, that is it for garden tour number 4. You got to see our little garden guests, the robins, and how big they've gotten. All of the new things that are sprouting. A lot of the flowers that I showed you last time are already gone, which is kind of sad, but there's a whole bunch of new exciting things that are popping up. I will bring you guys around for next garden tour very, very soon. If you have any questions about any of the things that you see here, what I'm doing, why I've chosen it, anything at all, or if you just want to share your gardening adventures, I would love to hear. Drop it in the comments. Have a beautiful rest of your day, gardeners.